today I'll be talking about React and web components, how it is, how it could be, and as I understand it, November 2022, because I like to timestamp like my talks because I'm always learning something new, especially like web components, and the web is always changing. And that's one of the things I really like, and that makes me a big fan of the web. There's always something happening and it's getting better every time, so I'm a big fan of that. Hi, I'm Dwane, a JavaScript developer advocate at Vonage. And if you're not familiar with Vonage, it's a cloud communications platform that allows developers to build applications that incorporate video, audio, text chats. You can send and receive SMS messages, WhatsApp messages, Viber messages, and actually make phone calls and a lot more all through the web. So I have like a coupon code and all these things that we can check out later. All right, cool. So, who's heard of web components? Raise your hand, make some noise. Now, was it because you spoke to me and I just couldn't shut up about them? Was that, it's cool, we can be truthful here, because if you talk to me for any length of time, I'm going to mention web components in some sort of fashion, so feel free. Now, who hasn't heard of web components? Nice, all right, so my hope is that like during this talk, that you'll either think of or like maybe even after the talk, like a project where web components can kind of fit in something that you're working on. It's kind of like that Toy Story meme, you know, like web components everywhere. All right. So now, if you've ever used like the video element or the audio element or the details element, you've probably had some sort of exposure to like web components. Am I the only one that thinks that the video element, like, you just put in the tag, you put in the source, and then you get a fully functional player. We didn't have to do anything for the play, pause button, for the timer, for the volume, none of that, right? Same thing for the audio element, and then even on the details tag, like we didn't have to set up any like event listeners for it to just work, right? So I always thought that's kind of amazing. And each element, each HTML element knows what it needs to do and kind of abstracts that from you, so you don't have to worry about it. It just does its job. So now imagine creating your own element, right? So a little bit about me, a little bit of background, is that I like to make projects, like a lot of projects. And I wanted to be able to have a section on each site that listed what I used to create the project and some other information about it. So, but I'd have to recreate it for every project, and that would become a chore. So I created a web component, Dwane-made, that could be reusable. And so the web component actually takes in data pulled in from the back end of the project, and it puts it in all the information that it gets into all the proper sections of it. All right, let's see. Cool. Now, I want to talk about another HTML element I'm a fan of, the humble input element. And with just this one same element, just by changing the type attribute, you can get so many different uses out of it, right? Anybody else thought that was kind of amazing? Like, just look at the date time local. Imagine having to create a functional calendar every time you wanted somebody to be able to select a date, right? And then also, I don't know what kind of CSS widgetry would have to be involved to get like this gradient, to be able to get that to work. Don't have to, because all you have to do is just change type to color. It's amazing. So there's that. So along the same lines of like the whole multiple use case, I created Dwane, wait, I still have that open. Dwane-timer. I forgot to actually do the time here. Cool. And so with this web component, I can actually set a date, and it will display the date and time in the user's time zone. And so that way I don't have to do any time zone math anytime I want to like display a time. And so not only does it show like the day and time, I can set it so that it will become a countdown timer once a certain set time has been met. And so let's take a look at an actual use case. So we're going to take a look at actually this website here. So I had a friend who asked, like, because this is around the time that Twitter Spaces, RIP Twitter Spaces, at least we'll see, I don't know, was doing spaces. And so they were always asking like, hey, how do you find your spaces? And I was like, I don't know, it's around. And so I was like, well, let me see if there's something I can make for people to help find their space. So, and plus, I like to buy domain names. Some may say it's a problem, but for me, it's like little learning opportunities, right? And so I created findmynext.space, because .space was a thing. So I was like, why not? And so let's see. Web3 always has something going on. So let's take a look for that. So just going out there and checking it out, finding it, hopefully the Wi-Fi. There we go. All right, so you can see here. So now we see live now, and there's a lot of stuff happening live now. And the actual countdown timers and the full date and time, those are all the same web components. And so I'm able to kind of just get a bunch of functionalities and different uses out of it. And then you can see it's also in the local time of whoever's visiting the site. All right, cool. Now, one of the coolest examples, even though that was pretty cool, I don't think so. But one of the coolest ones I ever saw of use case for a web component is model-viewer. This thing is kind of amazing. Like, just by placing, just like with like a video tag, you just put a source to a 3D model, and it just renders it for you. And you can interact with it. It's kind of amazing. So we're going to take a look at that website right now. Let's see. So yeah, so just by placing the tag, you don't have to worry about like 3D modeling, WebXR, WebGL, any of those other technologies that went into making this happen. Let's take a look at the website and close this one. So yeah, so here's the actual website. So now you see we have like the low poly joint. Yeah, you can do so much more. Like here's actually Neil Armstrong's suit that went to space. They scanned it, and you can actually use it now. I mean, look at the detail, like the little reflections and like the coupling, like even like the shadowing in the wrinkles. They even have put like a space thing in the helmet. That's super amazing to me. And so you can see here, you just put the model-viewer, alt tags, because of course, ally accessibility is super important. So we have that there. And then here's the source. And you just put in an actual, just like a 3D model. And then you see like an AR thing here. We're going to talk about that. And yeah, so a lot of cool stuff that you can do with it. Now, again, just by placing this model viewer, the source, and a little bit of JavaScript, you have this fully working thing. This is just super cool. All right, so get back to the slides. All right, so I went through the site and the documentation and started to read about the things that you could do with model viewer. And so I wanted to kind of think about like, well, what kind of project could I make? So I created a WebXR tic-tac-toe game with audio chat, right? And so you can actually play the game at xoxr.games if you want, if you'd like, later, hopefully. And, or now if you're bored, it's cool. I'm not gonna judge you, it's fine. All right, and so yeah, so let me, so we can kind of play through it. So over on the left, I have a tablet with the tic-tac-toe game. With a board on there, using the model viewer to show up on a web page. And then on the right, I'm using my Android's phone camera and a Chrome browser to show, the tic-tac-toe board in the real world through augmented reality. And it's using the WebXR API that's built into the model viewer web components. And so to pass the moves back and forth, I'm using the Vonage Conversations API via the JavaScript client SDK to keep track of the moves, and so that they're updated, each one, to update the boards, and so that they're in sync. And I'm using the Vonage voice API to allow players to be able to talk to each other while playing, because there's nothing better than like trash talking while you're playing tic-tac-toe. It's required. All right, so now, again, you can check it out for yourselves at xoxr.games. I'm hoping to add more games as I dive more into like WebXR and things, so check that out. Thank you. So now this is a personal side project, that's cool, but how do I use web components at work? So like I said before, Vonage helps developers add real-time communications to their applications. And so one of those ways is by creating like text chat apps, right? So I created a set of web components for the different parts of like a chat app. And so just by setting the conversation on the different elements, they know exactly what events they need to listen for or what events they need to send out, so you don't have to worry about any of that. You just place, just like with the model viewer, place the element where it is, a little bit of JavaScript, and it just kind of runs. So now, if you want like the members, VC members, to be on the left side of the messages, just in your HTML, just put it on the left side. If you don't want the VC typing indicator, just don't include it, and then you're good to go. All right, let's see. Now, another web component that I created for work is the VC-keypad. And I wanted to put that so that people would be able to put like a keypad in their applications. Because instead of having to like create an input and then a bunch of buttons and then wiring up all the buttons with JavaScript to be able to listen for them, to be able to put them in there, you just put VC-keypad, again, a little bit of JavaScript, and then you're good to go. And I scaffolded it using OpenWC, which is like a CLI tool, like a whole framework that if you're on a team, you know, people want to code things the way they want and put folders here and files in different places. Well, with OpenWC, it kind of like takes that all away from you. You just scaffold it, and it will give you all the files that you need, the folders, structure, and everything. So everybody's starting off at the same place, and everybody kind of knows like what needs to happen. And then so I created, and then OpenWC uses Lit, which is like a rendering library from Google. It used to be called Polymer back in the day. So if you're familiar with Polymer, it's now Lit. Yeah, cool. And so there's some properties and attributes on there. So I have like the placeholder. So if you ever wanted to change the placeholder, you could there. You can change the keys. There's the action text, like that's what this enter is. And then when you click and you start the action, it turns into the cancel text, which you can change. If you don't want the asterisk, you can get rid of it by putting no asterisk. You don't want the hashtag, no hashtag. And if you don't want the display, just pass in no display. And like I said, there's a method that you can call on the web component that will start the action, and it'll just start everything so that your outer application knows a thing has started. And then we have some custom events. So anytime you click like one of these, a custom event digit added is sent outside of the web component so that your outer application can know if it wants to be able to do something with that digit. And same thing for if you send all the digits and then when the action is ended. So those are the different custom events coming out of it. All right, cool. So now, you may be thinking to yourself, that's cool. You found, uses for personal and professional use cases, but are web components a thing yet? And because we have the internet, there's a website. And so thanks to Westbrook J for putting me on about it on Twitter. And he's actually working on Adobe Spectrum web components. And so there's the whole, you can use Photoshop on the web, right? All the different elements are Adobe Spectrum web components. And so that's a whole nother use case there. So now, are web components a thing yet? Yes. That's it. All right, just kidding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down this page, and it's going to show a bunch of different companies that are using web components. Now, I need y'all, when you see a company that you recognize, please say ding. All right? So I'm going to scroll down the page. You're going to see a company you recognize, and you're going to say, nice. All right, thank you. Thank you for participating. All right, cool, because I'm already super nervous already, so I appreciate y'all for doing this. All right, so I'm scrolling. Here we go. Oh, see. Yep, see. Oh, see. Yep. Thank you. All right, so I'm keep scrolling. Nope, it's a lot of them. Yes. And that last one, Wordle, didn't like sell for like $1 billion or something? Like, so you can make some money with web components. So just putting that out there. All right, so again, you can check it out, ourwebcomponentsathing.com. All right, here we go. All right, so let's take a couple of actual use cases and look at them. If you ever look at the YouTube source code, you'll see a bunch of like YTD hyphen stuff. And those aren't just normal like HTML elements. So that's a good like indicator that it's some sort of a web component, right? And so that's like a good way. So now if a site the size of YouTube thinks that web components are good enough, I think we can use them in like our own projects. So, and then another large scale one is GitHub. And so, when you like create like a pull request or make some changes to your repo, it'll say like however many times, how many seconds ago or whatever. Those are web components. And you can search, if you look into the actual source code, you'll see like a time-ago. And so and what's cool is they actually released a collection of the time-related web components that they created called time-elements. And so if you go to github.com/time-elements, that you can use in your own projects, because working with dates on the internet is terrible. It's bad, so bad. So if you can have somebody that actually put in the work for you already, why not? All right, cool. So now you may be asking about, what about browser support though? Well, good news. Modern browsers support all the technologies needed to make web components work. So for older browsers, there's actually a polyfill that you can use if need be. All right, so now we know that the browsers support web components, but the title of this talk isn't browsers and web components. So let's talk about React. How it is, not great. The reason why it's not that great is because the way React handles data and events, right? React passes all data as strings. And so if you're using strings, that's cool. But if you ever try to do like arrays or objects, you get the terrible object. So who's ever run into object? That's like just, and you crushes your soul a little bit. You're making some good headway, then it's like object. Terrible. All right. So, here we go. So now React has its own synthetic event system, right? And so that doesn't play well with the events that come out of the web component, because that uses actual the window and the document. So React doesn't do that. So it's kind of hard for it. But there's ways around it. So, and I have a whole blog post on how to do it and everything, like all the different versions of stuff. But question, how many of y'all knew there was an experimental branch of React? All right, okay. So, is it because we spoke about it? Yes, yeah. Again, I can't shut up about web components. And so here's how it could be, right? Bam. Full compatibility and support for web components. And so there's this website called custom-elements-everywhere.com. And let me close this. And so what they do is, like they say on the site, they're making sure frameworks and custom elements can be BFFs, right? So now let's take a look at some of the different libraries and frameworks. So they run tests, and the primary tests are like, how do you pass in certain attributes and properties, and how well do they listen to the events coming out of the web component or the custom element? And so we'll take a look at some of frameworks here. So Vue, pretty good. And Vue, the only real problem is the way that they are handling events. They only support lowercase and kebab case for right now, but hopefully they'll fix that. Here we go with React, not that great. React experimental, again, full support. Angular, full support. Svelte, full support. Even AngularJS, a thing that's not even used anymore, has full support for web components. Preact, Polymer, which is lit. Skate.js with Preact, HyperApp, Riot.js. So a whole bunch of, and there goes lit as well. So you can see a lot of them have high or full support for web components. So let me get back here. Yes, all right, cool. So, as you can see, even large to small frameworks all support web components, which is kind of cool. So, but now with full support for web components, you'll be able to pass in all types of data instead of just a string. So you'll be able to pass in arrays and objects into your web component. And as far as events, what's cool is it supports lowercase, camel case, kebab case, caps case, Pascal case, and just all the cases. So when I say full support, full support. All right. So now, for the benefits of full support, let's first talk about the unsung heroes of what we do, the maintainers of web components. Because so much time and effort, many times unpaid, goes into making our lives as developers easier, right? And so to be clear, I'm not talking about me. With me, you get a very detailed GitHub repo with instructions on how to install, use, you even get diagrams on how to style them, and a lot more. So yeah, my GitHub repos are super long. You also get blog posts that have a lot of information. So this is the blog post I was referring to before, and so you have different issues like why it's not that great with React. I have different solutions. I go back to like class components, how you handle the events, like the data. Then I also go through like functional components with hooks. And then there's just, yeah, so it's a whole lot of stuff. And then be able to make a call, all these things, be able to actually use it. All right. Now, plus, you can always reach out to me on Twitter or in our Vonage community channel. So we have like a Slack. And then, and I do a bunch of workshops. Or if you just see me around, just say what's up. And, but I'm talking about folks like Corey LaVisca. And now, Corey LaVisca created Shoelace. It's like a framework. Has anybody seen Shoelace before? Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. So yeah, this is great. So, so the website is shoelace.style, right? And so like it says on their site, Shoelace is a forward-thinking library of web components, and it has all these different cool things, right? So I'm gonna take a look at the website real quick. Should have that already up. Do I have that already up? Yes, I do. Okay, look at me, thinking ahead. All right. Why does Mac OS do that? I don't know. All right, so here's the website. And so it's cool because it has all these different like components that you can use, right? And the ones like image comparer, this is super cool. So if you ever needed to be able to compare two different images, all it is just, look at the source here. Again, it's just the web component, and you put inside of it two different images, and it just does it, which is kind of amazing. I think that's pretty cool. All right, then there's also the QR code, which I actually used that you scanned earlier. So you put in the URL, and it just works. So like you just put in the value of the site, and it just prints out a QR code. Super cool stuff. Oh, and another one, this I'm actually using in a project, the split panel. So if you ever wanted to be able to have, you know, like something that you can adjust between two panels, there's that. And again, it's just, you have a split panel, and inside you put like two divs. One is a start, and one is an end, and it just does it. And so like you can set where you want it to start and end, and you can do like vertical ones as well. Super cool stuff. All right, so that is shoelace.style. Hopefully in your next project you want to use some cool like UI elements, that might be a cool place. All right, cool. So now, one of the lists of features that I noticed was first-class React support. And so on the site, it goes on to say that for React, Shoelace offers a React version of every component to provide an idiomatic experience for React users. You can easily toggle between HTML and React examples throughout the documentation. Cool. If you notice Angular and Vue, they're pretty much like the same sentence. They just replace Angular and Vue. So whatever framework plays nice with custom elements. So you can use Shoelace in your Angular or your whatever framework apps with ease. It's just copy and paste, which is kind of amazing. So that means that Corey has to create a separate React component for each and every one of the UI elements that Shoelace has currently and in the future. So show of hands who would like to double their work. Like to double their work. Anybody like to double their work? No? Yeah, so for people like Corey, it would be great if you could just have just full support for React, right? And so, so Corey's an example of who I was actually referring to. And so I reached out and asked him, like, how does he feel about having to double his workload? And Corey, being a nice guy, he said he doesn't really mind, but then he sent me a message saying that actually the biggest gripe he has right now is having to maintain two different examples for each demo in the docs. And it makes the docs a lot slower because you're just basically doubling up all the different examples you have to show, right? All right, so then, let me see here, okay. So like I mentioned earlier, I created a web component to handle the mundane things I don't want to have to keep doing over and over again. And so I just want to be able to create cool stuff on the web. And so I felt it when Corey sent the message, especially when you aren't getting paid like Corey, but so many people are using and depending on what you are making. He gets like, I think like 1 million like downloads, I think on like NPM like a month or something. Like it's wild. But there's an update. So congrats to Corey. He actually recently got the opportunity to be able to work on Shoelace full time. And so I forgot what company is kind of like sponsoring him, but it's pretty cool. So it's something that he was kind of like working on and putting all his time into. he's actually able to do it full time, which is pretty cool. And he didn't have a bad job before. He was working at Microsoft before. So it's not like his terrible job. It's just that now he gets to actually work on what he really, really likes. All right. So now, who else would benefit from having full support of web components in React? How about yourself, right? Because as we just discussed, some of the issues with compatibility, doesn't it feel like you have to jump through hoops just to be able to use web components? And so, especially knowing that other major and even smaller frameworks fully support it. And so, if anybody's interested, I'm actually going to sell that as an NFT. If you want, I'm kidding, unless you're really serious about it. Okay, it's fine, it's cool. All right, so here's how we integrate a web component into a React application currently, right? So you got to get a reference to it. So there's the keypad use ref. So you got to do that. You set it to null because it hasn't loaded yet. And then you have to use useEffects to be able to add all the different event listeners that are coming from it. So again, you can't just listen for on the document or the window object because that doesn't really exist because React has its own synthetic event system. So that's why you have to do the reference.current because I guess it changes. I don't know a lot about React, but you got to use the current reference of it. And then that's where you add the event listener. And so these, from the keypad that I was showing before, these are all the different things. And then make sure you return removing the event listener so you don't have memory leaks and stuff. So that's a good thing to check out there. All right, and then this is in your return statement, this is where you have the actual web component. And so you put in the web component, and then here's where you pass again, again, just string text. And then you're making the actual reference connection here with the ref. Cool. Now, and I have a Stack Blitz demo also, so when you check out the slides, you'll be able to check it out for yourself. All right, so that's how it is, right? Let's take a look at how it could be. That's it. There is no use ref, there is no use effect, so you just put in the web component and you pass in the property, the event handlers, and so you put on and the name of it, and then you put your function that handles it, and then, so yeah, that is it. So, how do we feel about this? Well, say, yay! All right, cool. Thank you. All right, so now let's discuss another benefit, right? Oh, wait, let me close this one. Oh, close this here. Cool. Oh, it keeps doing that. Okay. Now, future-proofing. So now, if you've been developing React applications, you know there's been a bunch of large changes, right? I mean, anybody remember class components, right? Seems like way back when. But now, how about just in one version, there's 3 different ways to get references to your elements. Isn't that kind of wild, right? And so, so now to start kind of wrapping stuff up, how am I on time? I started at what? 3? I got 20 minutes, right? I might be able to get into some cool new stuff that I still wrapping my brain around, and so we'll see how that works out. All right, cool. So now, where am I at now? Okay, yeah, so cool. So to start wrapping up, right, I wanted to talk about a couple of ways you could style web components. Because one thing I love about the web is that people can express themselves however they want on it, right? Everybody can just come, bring your weird to the web. We love it, right? So now, as far as I know, there are 2 ways of applying styles to web components. There's the custom, CSS custom properties and part. All right, so I figured kind of go through them real quick. So CSS custom properties, also known as CSS variables, and people say CSS isn't a programming language. It has variables, and it has the calc function, right? Seems like programming to me, but that's a whole nother rant. You can talk to me afterwards about that. And so let's say we have a custom element, custom hyphen element, right? And there's a button inside of that web component, and let's say we want to change the background color. So you just put button. So this is in your actual, your web component code. So you have the button, you put background hyphen color, var, the actual variable for dash dash my element dash button my color, and then you put a default value, right? And then in your outer application, you set the root. So that's where you set the variable. So it's like dash dash my element hyphen button hyphen color blue. So what happens is your button inside your web component will be blue. If you don't set it, it'll be red. All right? And that's fine and good, but let's say we want to maybe change the color of the text in there. So then you'd have to, in the button, then you would have like color, and then variable, hyphen hyphen, my element hyphen button, or like font hyphen color, and then have a default. And then in your root, set the variable. But let's say you want to change the size of the actual font. Then you have to put, font size, variable name, and a default font size. Let's say you want to do the radius on the actual button. Well, then you're going to have to do border radius, variable. So you can kind of tell it gets kind of like a lot. And I don't know like a lot of CSS because it's a lot. You may miss something. Or maybe you want to just like kind of silo the person using it just to certain variables. So that could be a good thing. But me, like I said, keep it as weird as you want, right? So that's where part comes in. And so I have like a list, I have like links to the MDN kind of explaining it. And there's a really cool blog post that kind of talks about how we got to part. And so again, I have a link to all my slides, you'll be able to check it out. So the way part works is that same button element, you just kind of give it a name. So you name the part. And I'm a simple man. I call it button because this makes sense. You can call it Bob, whatever you want. For me, it makes sense to call it button. And so in your outer application, you put in the custom element name because I want to make sure that I get across that your web component is like a regular HTML element. So the same way you would get like an H1 or like a paragraph tag, same way you would style it with your web component. So you just put in the name of the custom element and then : part and then the actual button, the name. And so that's how you get that. And then you style it however you want, which is kind of cool. So let's take a look at a couple of examples here. So this is the same text chat web components I was talking about before. So, not too bad, nice like clean style, it's pretty cool. But let's say we want to change that up. Bam. So you can make it look however you want. Why you do that? I don't know. It's not I'm not here to say. You know what I'm saying? So you can make it look like that. Now, also, sometimes you need to use the CSS variables because unless somebody knows, like, so here is the members. So it's just kind of like an LI, and it's just, even and odds, right? So let's say, not too bad, looks pretty clean. And if you wanted to kind of change it up, bam. Again, why? I don't know, but it's not my place. And so I wasn't able to set the part on the odd and even because it's weird, like you can't, I don't know. I asked a bunch of people like smarter than me, and they said they didn't know. So unless somebody else knows, but I had to just set the actual CSS variables on there to make it work. All right, cool. All right, cool. Yes, I'm doing pretty good in time. Cool. All right. So now here's the VC keypad that I saw before. So now you may be like, oh, that's cool. I want to be able to enter in numbers and stuff. That's cool. But what if you wanted to kind of totally switch it up and make it like a little gamepad thing, where you can like, pew pew, shoot like little asteroids or something. I don't know what you would pew pew, but there. Again, I'm not here to judge. All right. So again, here we go. So now, I believe we're all here at Connect.Tech because we believe in the web, right? And I am once again asking that you believe in web components. And so yeah. So here are different links and things that I have. So this top one, webcomponents.in, because again, I have an issue with domain names. So if I have a link, /React for Real, takes you to the GitHub issue where they're discussing the experimental version of React. So feel free to check that out. My website is lifelong.dev. And yeah, and for all my like blog posts and things about web components and all that stuff, you can check out Dwane.in/Vonage. And yeah, thank you. All right. So what time is it? All right, I think I got a little bit of time, right? So you want to kind of check out something I've been kind of working on with like web components? All right. So I'm still wrapping my mind around this, right? So you can like server-side render web components. It's kind of a thing, sort of. So, all right. Now, the use case I'm looking for, I just closed everything out. Oh, give me a second here. Let me get a new window. Okay, so I have a website. Again, I have many websites. But the one I'm thinking about is, okay, so my slides.page, because my slides page, like my slide page are at my slides.page, because yes. All right, so now I have, here is my, that same Dwane-made, right? If you look at the source code for it, you see that that's all it is right here. Dwane, I don't know if you can see that. So you see it's Dwane-made here, right? But it's empty there. That means that it had to go do some JavaScript to be able to get what it needs to get done to be able to be filled out, right? And all there is to it is just, there's nothing like interactive really. Again, with the amazing details tag, like I don't have, this is all just HTML pretty much, right? And some CSS, right? So now, what I was thinking is that I'm a big fan of Astro. Anybody who's been using Astro? Oh, okay, let me put you on Astro. But you know about Astro, or you just not, okay, you just don't care about Astro, or is that what it is? Okay, for people who don't know, but still kind of, Astro is like kind of like a framework that it tries to ship as few JavaScript as possible, right? So it compiles your code, pretty much, unless you say you want it to have JavaScript to be interactive. And they have all these different directives, so that there's like a visible one, so it doesn't load the JavaScript until it's actually visible in the viewport. And so stuff like that, it's pretty cool. So I created that same site, find my next.space. This also has an about page. And so if you took a look at how Astro, again, you can see I use Astro for a bunch of stuff. And so if you look at this view source here, all right, so yeah, so here is the whole thing. So does it actually say, oh no, it didn't even tell you like the Dwane had a thing there. Yeah, but all this stuff here is the Dwane-made. Like it actually, like it compiles it. So it does all this stuff. So it goes, gets the data from the project and it just spits it all out. So this is the whole, what happens when you list. So you can see like, here's the summary, and here's the stuff about, the things I use like Firebase, Astro. So it actually put it in the actual HTML. So it's there, right? Because like we were showing before, it's not there. So that means that it just rendered everything and spit it out into the actual page. And that's cool, but let's say I make some sort of back-end change or something, and I wanted to, because I have an updates section, right? So let's say I do update it. I probably won't, but let's say if I did, right? That means I would have to go pull up the code and then compile it all over again, right? So now, what I'm thinking is that if I can, what was it? No. So I have this thing here. So lit.dev, and so there's a bunch of people kind of working on it. And so lit.dev, this is the like little framework thing I was talking about before for rendering web components. So they're one. The good folks at Ionic, they actually have stencil.js, which is another cool one. And that one, when I was using it, it compiles, so you write your code, it's kind of like TypeScript React, right? So the way it's kind of worked out. And it will compile your code into like the native stuff, the HTML, CSS, JavaScript for web components. Whereas with Lit, it actually, it's like 5 kilobytes, like a renderer. So it's not that much, right? And then Stencil. So you can talk to the good folks, Ionic, I'm sure they'll love to talk to you about Stencil, so you can check that out. And then also, earlier, Simon McDonald, they've been working on, I think it's enhance.dev? And let me know, if I'm talking too much and you just don't care or something, it's fine. .dev. I really hope that's it. Oh, I hope that's it. Don't want to pull up anything weird. Okay, yes, it is it. Woo, okay. So they're kind of like doing the same thing, except they're really more into like progressive enhancement. So they ship down like all the very basic of your elements. So they do all the server-side rendering stuff too, and then they add JavaScript to kind of hydrate it, which is what also Lit does, but they do it like even further to the bare bones. So you can check that out stuff too. But, so I've been working on this random project. So this is kind of similar to what I want to do with the Dwane-made, right? So I just created this real quick component here. And so has anybody ever used like Hacker News, like the API and stuff? No? That's fine. Oh, yeah, cool. So if you ever used it, you may know that because when you make a call to all like the top news stuff, it only gives you all these IDs. And then you have to do another call. And so I was like, oh, so if I have to do 2 calls, is it going to slow it down? Not so much because like, well, let me open this in a new tab. And so see how quickly that loaded? Cool. So I'm going to refresh this. And yeah, so you just refresh and then you're able to, so kind of like my Dwane-made, is there, you don't need JavaScript for this, right? But what the difference between Astro is that it's making the calls, so it's getting the latest information from the database. So I don't have to go and compile it all over again, right? And so take a look at so here is the actual server side stuff, right? And so when I do the get to see the page, is making a request to the Hacker News endpoint. So I get back some stuff here, and then I get the store IDs, right? Because again, they just give you the IDs, they don't give you the actual information. And so I have to make another call for it, right? And so then I do all that, and then this is where it's kind of breaking my brain, right? So I'm calling in the render index, which is in the page here. So this is the actual site, right? And so here's render index. And so it's kind of like your whole DOM, your page, right? And it has like these yield things here. I'm not even sure what that means. Again, I'm just looking at this. And so I don't know if it's a thing from, I don't know. I don't want to say anything. But yeah, here, so you can see I have all these things. I called it hn-list, right? So I put that, where is it? I put that here. So here's hn-list. So there's the web component, right? And so what's happening, I think, is that I make the calls, I get the stories, right? And then I'm JSON stringifying like all the different promises here, so I can get all the stories I need. And so what I'm sending back when the person makes the request is that render index, and I'm passing in stories into it. And so somehow lit is going through and taking this and passing all that stuff, the stories, into it, and then rendering it out. And then all that gets shipped down to the browser, again, as a response, and then that's what we have here. I don't know, I'm still trying to like figure this out. And so, but see how, like that's pretty fast, right? I mean, because it's making the calls, it's rendering it, and it's bringing it down. Like, I don't know, that's kind of amazing. And so that's what I've been kind of thinking about. And so I think that stuff is cool. But if you also think that stuff is cool, feel free to hit me up on whatever. And again, thanks. Appreciate y'all. Thank you very much. And, any questions or anything? Or I can try to help out or anything? Anybody have any questions about anything? Anything? Nope. Cool. Hey, can I get like I don't do selfies much, but if I could get like a picture of everyone, that's cool. Again, I really appreciate y'all for coming out here and just listen to me blather about random stuff. And so, okay, how do I do this? All right, so hold on. I'm so bad at this, you could probably tell. Let's see here. Okay, so we're just gonna take a picture, I guess. All right, I think I got everybody. Zoom out. I am. Okay, that's not working. All right, cool. Thank you all again for hanging out. Appreciate you. I think I got it. All right, thanks. Thanks again. And I hope you enjoyed Connect.Tech. I hope it's very cool. And get home safe. And hit me up if you need anything. Oh, I got pens and shiny stickers. Feel free to take them. I have like my business cards here and in the back. So again, thank you all once again for hanging out.